A big weekend this weekend in Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and a big weekend for black baseball as well. I really got the sense as emceeing the event, listening to all the speeches. Dave Winfield did a speech for Bud Fowler, who was a significant black ball player, the first player to integrate teams in the mid-19th century. And going from Bud Fowler to Buck O'Neil, Minnie Minoso, who was the first Latin black player in the major leagues, first black player for the Chicago White Sox. And then even then from there, you go to Gil Hodges, who is a Marine fighting in Okinawa, in the Battle of Okinawa, and won combat medals. And Jim Cott, who is, his long 25-year career, made a marvelous speech, and all the way up to Big Papi, Tony Oliva as well, and his career going through. You got a sense just looking that it was kind of a whole sense of baseball history, like not just a century. We're talking 160 years of baseball history in one afternoon.
I absolutely love the Hall of Fame and what it brings, when people see the gentlemen who have now entered into the Hall, the diversity, the fact that, as you said, I mean, the history is amazing. I love Big Papi's speech. I had a chance to be around him in his last season and that last game when he talked about it. But it's a very, very special moment, and the fact that there's so much diversity now, I think that they're recognizing all types of ball players now, which is so important.
Bud Fowler learned to play baseball in Cooperstown, by the way. Black man in Cooperstown in the 1860s. So that now he's back home and finally honored. A lot of players finally honored, right? Including, Gil Hodges, Jim Cott, Tony Oliva. They're part of the Veterans Committee, the new era Veterans Committee that are coming out. Give me one player you'd like to see in the Hall of Fame that has been overlooked to this point.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I want to say those guys that you had mentioned, all those guys made sacrifices that allowed me to play the game today. So I'm very appreciative of what those guys have done, and you get to hear their stories. We have to be reminded of those past stories in order for us to keep making moves toward our future in this game of baseball. So that's extremely important. Now, to answer your question, Kenny Lofton. That's my guy in which I want to see him be in the Hall of Fame. Today's committee has an opportunity, I think, in 2023. But this is a guy, when you're talking about the best center fielders of our game, he ranks 9th in WAR in all center fielders in our game. Yeah. That right there alone, besides the 622 stolen bases, besides what he did on defense, you're not talking about a huge power guy, but look at some of the numbers here. 6-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove, 9th in WAR, I mentioned. This is a guy that plays 17 MLB seasons. One other thing for you, let's not forget, he only had 1 year on the ballot, 2013. Wow. 3.8%. This is a guy that he was on the ballot with guys like Don Mattingly. If you remember, Dale Murphy was on the ballot. And then also it was the first year that guys like Barry Bonds, when we're talking about PEDs, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa. So he got overlooked in that situation. Bring him back. He deserves to be in the Hall.
I got a chance to watch him play firsthand in Cleveland, and I'll tell you what, man, he was an electrifying player. What a great he was a starter on that club in Cleveland 1995, 94, 95, et cetera, et cetera. He was just spectacular.
Kenny Lofton, Jim Edmonds, and Bernie Williams, 3 all-time great center fielders who I think all are worthy of Hall of Fame induction, all fell off the writer's ballot under 5%.
It's crazy.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
No.
Give us somebody.
I got Dick Allen. I mean, Dick Allen, to me, obviously a Phillies icon. My dad had a chance to play next to him. He told me he was the best athlete he had ever played with, one of the better third basemen, and he wasn't really necessarily known for his glove. But this guy, I mean, he had unbelievable numbers. I mean, I think he's a guy that should definitely be considered. He's gone through so much in Philadelphia, so many difficulties. One of those guys that was extra special. I mean, think about this. He was had the second best OPS plus during the course of his era. I mean, this is a guy that, for me, was one of the more difficult guys to get out, number one, but also hit the ball harder than anybody in the world. When I first met him, the first time I met him as a kid, he's not a big guy. He wrapped his hands around me like 3 times, man. He was just a special guy, and I loved watching him play.
Those OPS plus numbers.
OPS plus right there behind McGovey. Hey, look, even if you don't want to make an adjustment, because he played in a dead ball era in the 60s, he still had monstrous years, 64 for the Phillies, 72 the MVP season for the White Sox. He slugged 500 for his career, and one of the rare guys to slug 500 that's not in the Hall of Fame. So, no, Dick Allen should have been there. Yeah. He fell short by one vote this time around. All right, here's my one guy. I know Keith Hernandez Hernandez has become very fashionable now, right? And the Mets fans are behind him, and they retired his number. But Dwight Evans seems to be still lost in the sauce. I think Keith Hernandez, Bernie Williams, and Dwight Evans should be in the Hall of Fame. Dwight Evans, by the way, 60 WAR is kind of a benchmark that you should be in the Hall of Fame if you're over 60. Evans is at 67. And I agree with you, Xavier. If you're one of the top 10 players in the history of baseball at your position, you should be in the Hall of Fame. Evans is 10th in right field. You know who's at the top in right field? Ruth, Aaron, Ott, Clemente, Al Kaline. So, like, even with those guys, he still manages to get 10. And in the 80s, 1980 to 1989, see, this is what happens. Evans was hit by a pitch. He was concussed early in his career, so he was the great defensive player for his 20s. In his 30s, he was actually an excellent offensive player. It gets kind of lost, and you saw right there from 80 to 89, he was number one in the game in runs created, volume of offense. A lot of people miss that. You saw him play. No one ran on this man, a great defender.
No, and people don't talk about defense as part of this, especially in the outfield. You talk about offense. There was no better right fielder in all of baseball. He had a cannon. I mean, he was just very, very special. I had a chance to work with him, actually, with the Boston Red Sox, and he was imparting some great knowledge. I was the first-time coach in the outfield, and he was teaching me a lot about the game. Special man and a really special player.
Yeah, I like our group of three right here. You can't get everybody in. I'm in favor of a lot of them, but you're right. Dick Allen, it's been a long time coming. Hopefully those three center fielders get in at some point. Dwight Evans deserves a closer look.